Studio. We're going to spend some time today making an organic house track using all Ableton stock plugins, whatever samples you have available, and a laptop. So as you can see, I'm starting here with the Open Studio session template, which is always free. You can download it in the description of this video. If you are an Open Studio student doing the Ableton 12 Foundations course, as you know, most of the tutorials are built around a session that looks something like this. If this is the first time you're seeing it, I'll just take you through kind of some of the features of this template before we get going, so you have a better idea of where we're going. Starting over here, these are some utility tracks, which we will talk about later. This here is our drum group. It has some basic drum bus processing, but deactivated for now while we compose our beat before we get to the kind of processing phase. This is stemmed out into various kind of parts of the beat. So each of these tracks houses a drum rack, so you can curate whatever samples you potentially will use for this session and throw them into your drum racks and then choose between them as we compose. I find that this is just kind of a helpful way to do it so that you can have maximum kind of per stem control over your drum parts within your beat. You can have bus processing, but you can also, even after you've started composing, still switch out different hits if you just give yourself a lot of stuff to choose from within each of these racks. And finally, there is just an audio channel where we would throw like maybe some groove percussion or, a top loop or some kind of thing that's already audio that we want because it's already audio. Most of the time that is because it provides a nice groove. So this is our drum group. Similar with bass, I've just got a default MIDI channel set up with simple EQ, and then on the bass group some roar for saturation, just because that's something I kind of always use on my bass sample. This is for either ambient Foley, which of course we'll use in this track, or maybe a song starter. If you like using those to kind of compose your beat around, you can throw your song starter there. Now we've got our melodic instruments. I've separated it out for pad, keys, and lead. These are really just kind of suggestions. It makes browsing easier, so you can just go to the folder that says pads and then look through them and throw in there. I find that I have some version of these elements in all of my tracks, so I've just named them to kind of give me suggestions for things to load up if I get stuck or something. But of course, your instrument group may have different things in it and many more things, or, often in full productions of mine, I find that I actually create different groups. So like the pads is itself a group of, 2 or 3 synths. Same with the keys, and then I have maybe different leads. And so I'll group those differently and bus process them differently if needed. But that's just the beginnings of an instrument group, and then transition effects. Again, I usually have more lanes for this than just 2, but this is where we're starting. And then a resampling channel. This will just allow me to resample audio as I create it, which kind of can come in handy when making transition effects or just adding kind of like interesting processing to the track. We've got simple reverb with a glue compressor that is sidechained to our sidechain channel. More on that later. And just a really basic delay device. These are our only 2 returns at the moment. So that's the template that we're working with. Again, you can download this for free anytime from our store, or like I said, there will be a link for it in the description of this video. This is kind of built around what I call a minimalist productivity system. We're going to be creating a full track today without the use of any keyboard MIDI controllers. or outboard gear or third-party plugins. I want to make sure that you feel empowered to make the kind of thing that you want to make with just the tools that you have. So if all you have is a computer, headphones, and Ableton suite, you can make something that, sounds good and is professional. And I would hate for you to feel like a lack of gear is an impediment to accomplishing, your creative goals. So that's kind of what this minimalist productivity system is about. On that note, however, my personal music practice does involve a push to and a keyboard MIDI controller and a little bit of outboard gear. So you might catch me, a little bit confused if I, for example, forget to arm a track because I think that the push will automatically do it for me. But I'm trying to go through this process with just a laptop so that you can follow along and we can kind of just be on an equal playing field. I'm going to try to use a lot of Live 12's native features here. We're going to use some MIDI tools to create chords. We're going to use this keyboard to manually enter MIDI notes. We're going to use some generating and some transforming. We're going to do all kinds of stuff. So yeah, let's just get going. We'll start with a really simple beat. We're going to build it out here in session view. And then once we've got the kind of basic parts of the song, we'll go to arrangement view and kind of draw out an arrangement, putting some polish on it later on, automation, basic mixing, and that'll be our work for today. Like I said, organic house will begin with kind of a basic kick pattern and kind of build out our beat from there. Maybe we'll incorporate a percussion loop a little bit later to give the track some more groove and some more feel. So I've organized separate drum racks in each of these lanes so that you can, pick and choose whatever kick samples you might like. I usually load up about 16 samples just so I have a lot of options to work with. Another thing that I like to do is kind of pre-make racks with multiple percussion sounds so that I can just grab them. So I have made a organic house kicks, or let's see, what is it? House kicks maybe? Rack already. So this is a preset that I made that just has a bunch of house kicks that I like. Oh, or organic house kicks here. Great, let's do that. Let's put that there. And now, as you can see, this just populates with a bunch of kicks I pulled from this Mystify organic and progressive house sample pack. So thank you for that, y'all. So that's done. You can go through your browser and manually choose the ones you like and drop them in. Or if you pre-make these racks, you just have those at your disposal to load up in any project, which I find is really helpful. The less time I spend browsing for samples and overthinking how to prepare, the more my creative juices get drained, and the less I have to offer my actual kind of creative process. You know what I mean? So that's just a tip. Pre-make your racks, make your own presets, which I can show you how to do if you don't know how to do that. I don't know if I have one made for claps, so let's make one together. Let's say I like Beat Tools. Maybe I want to use Beat Tools claps for my clap selection here. I don't know if I'll use them, but this is just a good example to show you what I'm talking about. So we'll go to Beat Tools. We will go to Samples right here, Drums. Let's find claps here. There's a lot of claps. So let's just say I want to use all of these. I'm sure that I won't, but I can just highlight them all with shift click, drag them into this rack here, and then I can hit this save icon, the floppy disk, and I will just say Beat Tools claps. So there we go. Now this exists in my drum rack folder. I can just drop this into any project and I've got all of these tools claps. Again, I don't know if these are actually right for this session, but this is just by way of example. I think I have also a rack of hi-hats. let's see, I think I did like a hyper hi-hats thing. Yes, hyper garage hats. I've been loving this hyper garage kit. So I'm going to drag those into my hi-hats lane. Great. So sample selection, at least in this case, is basically done. I'm going to create a new MIDI clip by just double clicking here. By default, it makes me a 1 measure long clip. I'm going to change this to at least 4, so just that we have some stuff to work with. And now I'm going to start just clicking here. Make sure that the audition button is on, this little headphone icon, so that then when you click here, you can hear all of your samples that you've loaded up. I heard one earlier that I liked, pretty deep. Let's see. This one feels kind of nice. So I'm going to click in just a really basic 4 on the floor pattern. And I'm going to duplicate that across this 4-bar clip. So just to recap, I set the clip length here by manually entering 4. So rather than a 1-bar clip, it's a 4-bar clip. And then I clicked in on every beat a single MIDI note. I did that just by double clicking in the cell, and a MIDI note will show up. So now if I play this back, we've got 4 on the floor. So just basically kick drums playing quarter notes across a 4-bar clip at the BPM, which is our master BPM here, of 130. So let's see here. I will play this back. Great, pretty simple. It might be fun to add some accent notes here to give this a bit of interest. So maybe we'll add a pickup after the second measure. So you'll hear what I'm talking about this one. So just a little bit of variation. We don't want our kick drum to be super busy, but that is a way to just give it a little bit of variation, add a few things in to give it some character. Now, another thing you can do if you're enjoying composing longer clips, you could come here, change this to 8. Now, as you can see, our 4-bar clip only takes up half of the clip. You can select this entire range and hit duplicate it with Command D, which will duplicate it across the second half of your new 8-bar clip. So now maybe you want to add one more thing as an 8-bar turnaround. So now we've got some variation. We've got some built-in energy from bar 1 to bar 8, and that's good for me for now. Let's move on to snares. Let's see. I'll play back this kick while we audition some snares to see what we like. I kind of like that. That could be fun. These are nice. So let's enter some snares. I just happen to know that the snares will be on the 2 and 4 of any given measure. So here with this 1-bar loop, I can just enter them on the 2 and 4 and play it back, and it'll sound like this, which is pretty classic. But same deal, I want to add some variation. I don't want this 1-bar loop just looping inside of my 8-bar kick phrase, right? So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make this an 8-bar loop. I'm going to highlight this region of the first bar. I'm going to hit Command D and duplicate this over across my range of 8 bars. And then I can add a little bit of variation. Maybe I'll put one here so it sounds like that. So I've got I've got a snare here and then a couple of snare accents that I just threw in kind of for fun. Let me straighten these out. Benefit of having multiple samples loaded up is maybe I don't actually like this sample, but I like the accent it gives the beat. I can just move all of these down. I'm pressing the arrow key with all of them selected. So that's a fun way to experiment and give your beat some variation and kind of, keep it flexible. All right. So there we go. We've got some snares in. Now, what do we have for claps? Oh, this is the one that we made with the Beat Tools claps. Cool. Let's just find one That seems like a pretty basic, like 808 or 909 clap type thing. I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with the snares, but just keep them a little bit less often, make them a little bit sparser. So let's find a clap that we like here. Go down to that azimuth. There we go. So let's just put it on the 4 of every measure, right? So you've got those little snares on the 2 and the accents, and then clap on the 4. So we've got something like this. Quite simple, but so far effective. Now hi-hats, we could do a number of different things. This is sometimes where I like to incorporate a percussion loop, but for our purposes here, maybe we'll just manually program something in so you can see more technically how it's done, and then if you decide you want to just use a percussion loop or a hi-hat loop, you can easily do that. But I will manually program some stuff in just so you can see how it goes. All right, so let's listen back. Here's what we've got. That's pretty good. Yes, okay. So once again, we will create a clip here. Let's start with 4 bars and then we'll expand it to 8. Manually clicking in hi-hats is pretty easy, especially when you use your duplicate function. You will find that making music on a laptop becomes a lot easier when you know your key commands. So command duplicate can be used for MIDI or audio or really or devices or tracks or anything. If you want to quickly duplicate anything, Command D is a way to do it, and getting used to using key commands is a really nice way to enhance your workflow. The Open Studio Ableton Foundations course has in its intro like a long list of all of the crucial Ableton key commands, which I definitely recommend if you haven't checked that out that you do so. All right, so let's find something that'll work here. So I have just some offbeat hi-hats here. I did this for the first 2 measures, and I'm going to duplicate this across and see what happens. Let's see. That is not what I meant. So I'm going to undo this, and sorry about that. Really what I wanted to do is something more like this. So for our first measure, we have got this on the 2 and the 4. I'm going to highlight this whole section and duplicate it. So another thing that you can do here is if you option drag, you can duplicate everything and put the new ones wherever you want. So I'm going to hold option with all of these, so all of these notes are selected by clicking here, and then if I hold option and drag these forward, we'll have something like this. So let's see what that sounds like. That's pretty good. Now let's add some accents. I'm going to put one here and maybe here, and then let's do that thing where we double the length. So I'm going to make this an 8-bar loop, highlight this entire range, copy it over, and so now we have an 8-bar loop. If I change some of this stuff, then we'll have more variation. So let's see what we've got so far. This is pretty good. Just adding some little like kind of grace notes to give this beat a bit of groove. And now let's just find maybe, so this is like a closed hi-hat. Another fun thing we can do here is take any one of these grace notes and just move it to a different hit. So, that'll be there. Maybe that'll be up there too. Maybe there. Let's see. And maybe these guys can go there. So give it a bit of variation that way. Ton of difference, but it will definitely add some interest to your beat. So there's our closed hi-hat part. Maybe we can find a percussion loop too. So let's see. I'm I'm going to go here to packs, which is everything that I've ever downloaded from Splice. There's a lot of stuff there, but let's see if we can just find something that's like house hats or hi-hats. Those are all one shots, so let's do hat loop. Funky tech house, groovy house drums. Let's see what they have in here. That's kind of nice. Let's just throw that in there and see what it does to our beat. As you can hear, that's kind of a swingy house groove kind of thing. So if you want your drums to adopt that feel, there's actually a way to do that. So this is a pretty good example. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to control click here and go down to extract groove. So within this audio clip, you have got some timing and velocity discrepancies from just what would be straight gridded out percussion, right? Those little discrepancies define the groove of this clip. So if I extract this groove, it's going to take all of that information, all of that like kind of humanizing, groovifying information, and it's going to make it available to apply to all of the other drum programming we've done. So as you can see, I manually clicked in all of these drum hits. So they might not be swinging or grooving in a very human way. This is one way to make them sound a little bit better. So I've extracted this groove. The groove is just named the name of the clip, basically, and that ends up in our little groove pool. So I can adjust these parameters, timing, quantization. I can give it a little bit of randomness, and then I can apply that groove to all of these clips. So I'm going to highlight my kick, snare, clap, and hi-hat. I'm going to go over here. So now in this clip view, you've got all of them highlighted, and you can see all of the drum hits that we've programmed in. Very handy. We're going to go here and we're going to select the groove we just extracted. Maybe take the timing down a little bit. We don't want them to be all quite as swingy as the percussion loop. But now we're going to play it back, and you're going to hear a little bit more of a human feeling from this beat. Check it out. Pretty good. So I like this. I'm starting to feel like maybe it's a little bit too fast. So I'm just going to take our master BPM down a little bit. Let's try 126. Okay. So that's sounding a little bit better at that tempo. I'm going to play back and see if I can just massage the groove and get it to sound just a little bit more natural and cohesive. Let's see here. Another thing that sometimes I do is I won't groove the hi-hats. This often just like gives them a little bit more of a straightforward feel, and sometimes it kind of works a little bit better. I find that if I groove programmed hi-hats too much, they kind of start to swing in sort of a weird way. So let's check this out with them not grooved at all. It's pretty good. I'm going to take down the volume a little bit, do just a little bit of a volume balance here among my drum elements. That feels like something we can compose to. Now, maybe we will try to give this some harmonic information. Because I don't have a keyboard MIDI controller, I'm going to utilize this new MIDI tool in Ableton Live 12 called Stacks, where it basically just generates chords for you. I think a nice piano would be a good place to start. So with Shift Command T, I'm going to create a new MIDI track within my instruments group. Just going back, in case you didn't catch that, these groups can be expanded and contracted using these little buttons. So just to give myself a little bit more screen real estate, I am collapsing this drum group into just this. But If we hit spacebar, we can play back our beat at any time, and we will use that to compose some piano chords. So with Shift Command T, I'm going to make a new MIDI track here. I am going to load a piano sound onto that track. So I'm going to just under all, now let's do under sounds, piano. We'll go down to a grand piano, but all right. So I'm going to just choose this basic piano sound, and we'll be able to process a little bit. We'll be able to process it a little bit more later. So I'm going to make Shift Command T to create a new MIDI track in this instrument group, and I'm going to place this piano on the track. So we can play back our beat like this. And we're going to make some piano chords. We're going to do this using a new Ableton MIDI tool called Stacks. Stacks basically just allows you to make chords. It's kind of a strange, first of all, it can be found here under Generate. And then you have this drop-down chooser that gives you all kinds of things you can generate. We can generate rhythms for our drums. It's all on a per step and per note basis, which is really interesting and cool. But right now we're going to do stacks just to make like a chord progression for this clip. Again, I'm going to start with a 4-bar clip so we don't just play the same thing over and over again. The groove is automatically applied to this clip, which is totally fine. Yeah, we'll just start like that. So our first stack, we'll just do a C major. It's a good time to talk about keys. Notice that the scale function is enabled here. We can highlight the scale so we know what all is in it. If you want kind of accidentals or borrowed tones, you can undo the scale but keep scale highlighted so you know what the scale notes are, but you don't have to play them. And then, of course, just keep in mind that the master key of the session can be found up here. We are in C major. So here's our first stack. Let's make another one. We'll change the inversion and also the root note. So if we've got a C there, let's make this an A, right? And then that seems like a fine inversion. And then we'll make another one and another one. Let's see what we've got. That's pretty nice. So we've got a C, an A minor, a D minor, and then the last stack. We could go back to A, or maybe we could even maybe we could split this into two. So we've got that, and then we're going to let's duplicate it by highlighting all of these and option dragging them over. And let's see what we've. Okay, I'm not convinced about this turnaround exactly because a few too many things going on. Let's get rid of them. What we've got here is so I've got some basic piano chords here. I am going to fill these out a little bit. I kind of want some higher notes, and maybe I'll create some suspensions and stuff within them. Before I do that, I'm also just going to duplicate this pattern. So if I change stuff in the second half, we'll have a bit of variation. So again, clip length, we'll do 8, and then we can highlight this whole, excuse me. We're going to highlight this whole region here, duplicate it over. So now we have basically the same thing, but twice as long, and we can find some variation within it. So we don't need to stick to 3 notes per chord. I'm going to start creating some extra notes. So for example, this, I am going to hold down Option and drag this A up to a higher A. So I like to do that with the middle voice of things, just to like give this, just to like lead voices in a different way and provide some different kind of motion within the chord structures. Let's try it with this A too. So Option, drag all the way up to A. So now we have this A that's going to be kind of riding on the top as a kind of melodic element. Let's see what happens. Sounds good. Let's do the same thing with a B. So then we'll have this A descending down to a B. So I'm going to Option drag. Fun. Now let's do this with the F. So we're up to the F. Now let's do some of the same stuff. So we'll put that up there. We'll put this F up here, but no high A here on your C. Feeling pretty good. Let's put this B up here. That's kind of interesting. All right, so let's see what this sounds like. This guy up here. Maybe make this a kind of a 7th chord. What else can we do that could make this have a little bit more emotion to it? Let's try to put some suspensions up in here. Like maybe if we move this up just a step. Make this into a little melody and bring it up here. And start to craft a little bit of motion this way. Do a little walk up here. How about that? That's pretty nice. got a little bit of voice leading, got a little bit of variation, and we've got an 8-bar piano loop. Another thing that I think is helpful to think about at this stage, so we're going to like duplicate these chords across to other instruments and use this MIDI in various different contexts. But one thing that I think people miss a lot, especially when they are having to just click in their melodic MIDI notes, is that you'll notice each one of these stacks is right on the beat. It's sometimes fun to have some variations in timing with the way your chords hit, especially with kind of a housey beat like this. It's fun to have, in some cases, the chords kind of hit a little bit sooner than the beat. So I'm going to back this up just a little bit. And I'm going to move these guys, the start of them, back a little bit. So hear how this sounds. Right? So same here. We're going to back these up. And we're going to back up the start of this, which really gives things a lot more motion. So check this out. Great, and we'll do the same thing with this stack. So we're gonna just move these a little bit out of the way, move these forward this much, and do the same thing over here. I can understand why, if you play keys, this seems totally tedious. But again, it's just to make sure you know that you can have kind of like humanized chords having just a laptop. So this isn't exactly the way that I work, but I know how to do it. And if I am without a MIDI controller, this will absolutely do. So we've got some timing, we've got some voice leading, we've got some like kind of interesting emotive chords happening. Let's see what else we can do with MIDI tools. I'm going to go to transform here. We can arpeggiate them if we want. That's not necessary in this case, but strumming might be kind of interesting. So I'm going to select all of these guys. I'm going to come over here to strum. And I'm just going to visually adjust the beginning point and the ending point of this strum. So it's a little bit more as if they're played by a human hand. Let's see how this sounds. Like that. I also kind of want maybe just one more piece of movement over at the end of this clip. So I'm going to back this up a tiny bit and option drag to give us one more leading tone up into the beginning. Okay, so I've backed up the beginning of this first chord into nothingness, so it's not audible at the beginning, but that's okay. We're going to just adjust this bit a little bit, but move this out. Pretty good. I'm also just going to check out this humanize button and see what that is. here is a little bit as though you were strumming strings or something. So this kind of is meant to affect the curve by which these notes are excited. Again, it's a little bit tricky here for the beginning of the clip because we've backed up their position, but how about I just manually edit these? So I'm just gonna take this. I'm gonna move it up a little bit so that it hits right at the beginning. Okay, that's definitely a theme that we can use. I might be interested in applying some processing to this piano so it doesn't sound so straightforward. Without doing any insert effects, I can look at what we already have going on this instrument rack. There's some reverb, which I think I'm going to probably crank a little bit. Key noise too, which could be fun, and I might just detune it a little bit to give it a bit more character. So I've got that. And then I also have a reverb here set on return track A. So I'm just going to crank that a little bit, turn the volume down, and see what we've got. So we've got these long held chords. This is kind of making me think that really maybe like a simple plucky bass would be fun. So let's just go back to the browser and try a pluck bass. FM pluck bass. That could be good. So I'm going to be able to play back our beat on a piano. And I'm going to try to play in some MIDI here. So this is a different method than creating a clip and clicking into it. Here I'm going to utilize the keyboard, I don't really know what else to call it, to enter in the MIDI as though I were playing a keyboard. So to change the octave, you have the keys Z and X for octave down and octave up. So you notice the first note I played was pretty high to be a bass. I hit Z and then I was down an octave. I'm going to hit Z again and down another octave. Let's see what we can do here. Something that I have a little bit in mind. So as you can see, I came over here and I clicked this button. It shows up red to tell me that this track is armed. So now if I were to click here, it's going to give me a count off and then start playing everything back and capture what I record. So what I was doing was just hitting my H key in kind of a plucky rhythm on, so that would be an A, to make just like a kind of a rhythmic bass line. So let's try to put that in, and then we'll quantize it and groove it and see where we're at from there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's the MIDI that I entered. It's pretty good, but I didn't play it exactly in a quantized way. So I'm going to go click into here. Command A will select all of the notes I played, and then Command U will lock them to the grid. So let's see what that did. That's pretty much what I had in mind. I don't know exactly if I love it, but that's what I wanted to do. All right, yeah, I'll turn up the unison. FM tune is good. Maybe turn up the delay, see what happens there. Another way that we can very quickly kind of build out some texture is to use this exact MIDI on different instruments. So I have just like a really basic wavetable called the Atmos pad here, just like atmosphere. I can just grab this, Control C, Control V here, and now I've got all that MIDI information in this pad. Now it might not sound amazing straight off the bat, but with some manipulation, we'll be able to get it sitting well with the piano. So let's try this. Okay, pretty muddy. So I'm going to select all of these, shift, arrow up, puts them 1 octave up. So that'll be really helpful. And then what else can we do here? We are going to not humanize them. We are going to maybe take away the strums as well. So where's our transform? Strum. We're not strumming. We're going straight, and we're quantizing to the grid. Ooh, that does not look like to the grid. Okay. Not terrible, but we're going to turn it down. We're going to give it some reverb. And then we are also going to... Okay. No strumming. And then we're also going to go back to this instrument, and we don't need any sub gain there, and we're going to just move up the attack and down the release so that it hits a little bit more on the beat that it's supposed to. Something. I think now that we have just like a few basic elements ready to go, we might think about doing some initial effects processing. So for our beat, I'll just show you a few things that I like to do. How you process your drums is totally up to you, but I have a pretty simple way to start out that I'd suggest. One, your drum bus comes already loaded on your drum group if you're using the session template. So we can just engage that. I will solo the drums so you can hear the difference. Okay, so a couple of things we can do. We've got um, compression, which we can kick on here if we like. I usually like to kind of shorten the transients to give the beat just a little bit more space to add kind of like ambient foley or noise or something into its sort of crevices. We'll get into that in a little bit. Sometimes the high end is like a little harsh, so we can use dampen, or if we want to saturate the top end, we can use crunch, boom. I would say the kick is already pretty boomy, but if we wanted to make it more so, we can use this. Now, one cool thing is that we can assign what frequency we would like the boom to be at. So if I move this, it will tell me about what note I'm playing, which is really nice knowing what key we're in. So since we're in the key of C, if our kick drum resonates, kind of rings out on a G, that's the dominant interval of C major, so we can be assured that that sounds pretty good. I'm just going to do a little bit of tweaking of these things. Another thing that you'll want to do in conjunction with your effects processing is revisit your volume balance. So I'm hearing a few things really kind of jutting out of my drum mix. Let's take another listen. Okay, so for one, in our hi-hat clip, this guy is feeling a little bit extra to me. So I'm going to try to find where that hit is. It's this. I'm just going to turn down the volume of this hit a tiny bit because it's really poking out, you know? This one too. We just need a little less of that guy. Looking good. We can give it more drive if we want. Less transient that's sometimes a good combo. If we really want to distort it, we can go medium or hard, but I stick with soft. This is what it would sound like with the drum bus compressor on it. Pretty crunched out. And then with drum bus, you also have wet dry. So maybe I only want 80% wet signal of the drum bus and leave the rest unaffected. Sounds pretty good. I also have a graphical EQ, which I'm going to engage here just so I can see kind of what I have going on and apply some EQ post drum bus. Obviously, we have got lots of low-end information coming through on that kick. So I'm going to create kind of a hard shelf here just to eliminate some of the inaudible low frequencies, which will keep our drums from getting muddy. So our drums are sounding okay for now. Let's see about some bass processing. I like where we're at with this bass line and this bass sound. I'm going to go ahead and engage this instance of roar, and we'll talk about side chaining compression a little bit later. But here we are going to, well, let's just listen to what this bass sounds like. So here's without roar, and here's with roar. So one fun thing to do with roar here is to put it in multiband mode and then just affect the amount on the lows. So we'll leave these bands alone, or maybe we can saturate the mid a tiny bit. But what we're really trying to do is warm up the low end. So we've got this amount here, and then we can kind of boost the overall drive here. So you can kind of hear it's a more exaggerated effect like that. But I think that's probably a good level. Let's hear it in the mix. So we've got basic effects processing on the drums, basic on the bass as well, some piano chords, some pads. I kind of want to add maybe like a simple drone that will just play kind of like longer extended notes over this piano chord progression. So we've got the pianos kind of playing the central theme, and then these pads that just kind of gently underlie it and fill out some harmonic information. And then over the top, I want kind of like a high drone. I'll put that in the lead track. A high drone just to, like I said, make slower changes and maybe create different kinds of tension throughout that chord progression. So I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to search for kind of like a soft sound. There's this one that I like to use for high drones called Ice Flow Shush. This comes from, I think, a pack called Drone Lab, which I got for free from Ableton. I like it a lot. Let's see what we've got here. I'm going to try to audition this sound. And of course, nothing is happening for some reason, which is that I didn't arm the track. There we go. Pretty cool sounding, but I'm noticing that it's playing more than one note, which can be difficult if you are trying to play with chords that you've already established. So I'm going to go into the device and just see what's going on. Look, the first thing I see is a chord device. So I can just easily deactivate that, and then it'll just play one note. All these other devices, I can go in here and change their settings if I want to. Not totally necessary for our purposes because I know that I really like this preset, but that's just a thing you should be aware of. If you download a really complicated preset that has a lot of devices and the macros are really complex and whatever, you can just go in and edit it. And like we did with the racks, you can come over here and save your version of it, and then you've got your own preset that you like to work with. So now I'm going to test this again, and you can hear it's only playing one note. So that's kind of fun. I'm going to play this beat back and just like improvise a little bit on this. I might even take it up one more octave. Maybe just play something like that throughout and give the harmonics a little bit more variation and interest. So let's see. Interesting. I'm going to do a pass, and maybe I'll do a long pass, and then we'll work on editing it down into something that we can use. How about that? So I'm going to click this record button. It's going to count me in, and then I'm just going to play around on my computer keyboard with this high drone synth thing. Okay, ready? Let's go. So I liked some of that. I didn't like some of that, but we've got 16 bars, which is, a good length to work with. You noticed how when I clicked into this MIDI clip, I just saw no notes because, or maybe I was down here, I saw no notes because they were all up here. That is just, you can scroll however you scroll across the piano roll here within a MIDI clip. But if you want to just zoom in on only the notes you have, you can hit fold, and look at that. So now I just have a better, if I had played, a melody in a multi-octave range or something, the range of notes on the piano roll would of course be bigger. So this just collapses all of the notes that you've played and eliminates all the other ones. And it shows you the notes here, so like you can always change that. Say you can unfold and put the notes wherever you like. But that's just a handy tool if you want to be able to see everything. So let's play this back, and then I'm just going to do some manual editing, then we'll do some quantizing, and then we'll see where we're at. I like that, but this E doesn't really need to be there. I think maybe we'll go straight to the G. A thing that I'm kind of realizing now that we've laid our bass down just on a straight A pedal is that we're not really in C major, we're more kind of like in A minor. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I continue to compose this track. This G is not really sitting right with me. Let's see what it would be like if we went straight to this B. That'll definitely be a moment of tension, but let's see. This B is not really working for me, so I'm just going to extend the C out that way, and F is definitely not supposed to be there, but we'll do that. That's sounding kind of like something. So I'll leave that alone for now. And maybe in this keys lane, we could put an arpeggio of some kind. If you don't know, arpeggios are just kind of chords, but that are played out singly, usually in some kind of like rhythmic way. So you've got a chord that's just 3 notes at once, and then you've got an arpeggio, which is those 3 notes played at different times over the length of time that the chord is supposed to be played. So arpeggios can be nice because they are both harmonic and rhythmic information. You can design the arpeggio to go in a number of different patterns, like maybe they go up, maybe they go down. There are all kinds of different like pattern sequences that Live's arpeggiator can do. So maybe if we get, let's see, maybe our multi-saw pluck. Yeah, let's put this right here. That's kind of what it sounds like. There's a lot of fun macros assigned to this preset, including a squarify, which I love to use. FM is fun. We have a kind of global effects mix here, and echo offset, which just makes the kind of delays not totally in time with the track, which can be kind of fun, add a little bit of chaos, a little bit of interest. I'm going to filter this down a little bit so it's not quite as harsh. I'm just going to play a chord, and then we'll arpeggiate it, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. There we go. There we go. All right, I'm going to highlight, excuse me, I'm going to come over here to this clip I just recorded. I'm going to highlight all of them. Command U is what quantizes these things. I am also going to use a feature here called legato, which just extends the note range of every MIDI note up until the last note. So it kind of plays, you have a kind of continuous change from note to note, which on a piano keyboard is not difficult to do, but on this keyboard is a little bit more difficult. So let's find legato. Again, just make sure that all of these notes are highlighted. We're going to legato them. See how that just filled this in right here? So that's what legato does. And then, yeah, we'll go to transform and we'll do arpeggiate. 30-second notes feels a little fast to me. Kind of nutty. Fun, but a little crazy. I'm just going to stick with one step so they don't get too high. And then this is, remember I told you earlier about like how you can go up or down. It's got a lot of different patterns. And as you can see, when I select a pattern, it actually changes the MIDI notes within this MIDI clip, which is very cool because then I can go in and manually edit these things if I want them to play, less or whatever. So let's try up and down. See what that does for us. See, it's made a new pattern. I think I'm going to do 16th notes here, and let's see what we've got. took this groove of the swingy hi-hats. I'm going to take that off and see how it sounds. Also, it's getting a little intense for my ears. I'm going to take the volume down. I'm going to give it some of that reverb from our return A. I'm also going to double click here and go back to the instrument and just filter out some of the highs. So let's try that. I like that. I took the distance down to 0, so it's just the notes that I played. If I wanted it, I think it had been up at 12 maybe, so it goes up an octave. Is that possible? I can't actually remember where we were. Let's see This is definitely usable. I'm going to go back here and filter out even more of the highs. So it's more of just like a short pluck, and then it's something where at moments of intensity we can open up this filter, and those things will really start to kind of twinkle and shine a little bit more. Offset is down, so it stays really rhythmic. And then, yeah, we can increase a lot of these parameters over time using envelopes, which I'll show you how to do later. And that will give us some chaos and help with transitions and kind of ramping up intensity and stuff like that. So we've got kind of a good musical baseline. I wonder if we might start arranging. Before we do that, I want to show you another thing, which is rhythmic sidechaining compression. So we've got drums, bass, and synth group. These things are often things that I will, group process, as I've shown you before. With respect to the bass and the instrument group, I'm going to do something called rhythmic sidechaining, which if you are, a producer of music, you're probably aware of this, but I've set up kind of a fun system within this session template to have an auxiliary sidechain channel. So a lot of the time, you'll notice our kick drum is playing kind of a 4 on the floor beat with some accents. We could easily put a sidechained compressor on our bass and our instrument group, which would sort of duck these instruments out of the way of this kick drum. Just for context, it's a technique that's super common in dance music, which just basically uses a compressor that takes an input from, let's say, for instance, the kick. So when the kick hits, this other stuff gets out of the way. It's an effect that is called ducking in like audio engineering, and it just makes the kick hit a lot harder, and other things kind of get out of the way, so you can have a real punchy kick and not overdrive your mix. It also creates some nice like dynamism. You can do this on a reverb to kind of rhythmically modulate the space of your track, which is kind of fun. That's where you get your like sort of whooshing, expanding, contracting rhythmic space effect, which we will probably do in this track a little bit later when we do more mixing. But anyway, I don't actually usually sidechain stuff directly to my kick pattern because I want sometimes those rhythms to be different. So I've set up just a sidechain channel. This is an input that you do not hear because, as you can see, the volume is all the way down. But if you correctly use sidechaining compressors, you'll still be able to hear the input of this. So I'm going to make a really simple, our default clip here is just 1 bar, which is totally fine for my purposes. because I just want a 4 on the floor kick here. So you'll see this going. This is just boom, 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 boom. Super simple 4 on the floor kick. But you'll also notice that it got automatically grooved with the groove of the rest of our drums, which I think is really cool. So now the input that creates these rhythmic effects is done according to the same groove as the rest of our drums, which, as you remember, is based on the groove of this one hi-hat loop. So this is how you get tracks to really like operate in kind of a rhythmically cohesive but still technically irregular way, if that makes any sense. So our sidechain channel is coming in here. You can't hear it, which is good. There's just a dummy kick here in a drum rack, but again, the thing is all the way down. So you're not hearing this kick do the thing, but you're going to hear the effect of the kick on the compressors, which are going to compress our bass group and our instrument group. So I'll show you how that goes. We've got here our bass group. We've got that saturation with roar that I told you about earlier. And now we're going to go over here. We're going to turn on this compressor. It's taking its audio from the sidechain. So you can choose whatever channel you want. Like if we wanted to sidechain it to the kick, I'd put the kick here. But since we're using the auxiliary sidechain channel from this session template, I have that selected. Now, the way this glue compressor works is the threshold is all the way open, which means it's not doing anything. It's as soon as the incoming signal hits the threshold that you'll see the compressor start to compress. And I will just like do a really drastic example of this so you can actually hear what sidechaining does. And I'm going to do it with this bass soloed. So, all right. So we're going to increase this threshold. And you can see the rhythmic behavior of this 4 on the floor clip, on this compressor. So it's just ducking the bass out of the way every time this kick drum hits. So the kick drum as we have it right now isn't really on the downbeats, so the effect isn't super drastic. But with something like our instrument group, you'll notice its effect a little bit more. A note about compressors before we move on. This is kind of at which point the compressor kicks in. It creates what's called gain reduction. So it kind of like squishes the peaks of a sound and amplifies the valleys of a sound to have a sound playback more evenly. That's basically what any compressor does. But doing that sometimes creates overall gain reduction, which means it makes the signal quieter. To fix that, we have something called makeup gain. So I just give it a little bit of makeup gain, not a ton, because I don't need my bass gain coming from a compressor. I have ways of saturating it and boosting volume and stuff to make sure that the level is great, but I do want to make up some of the lost gain, the lost gain from gain reduction. Attack, how fast it kicks in, release, how fast it releases, and the ratio is like kind of just like how heavy the compression itself is. So these settings are fine with me for now, although I might want just a slightly faster release, so I'm going to place that there. Soft clip is a way of just kind of chilling out some of the upper frequency transients. So I'm going to engage that as a matter of habit, but in this case it doesn't, it's probably not going to do a whole lot. Okay, so now this is our sidechained kick. All right, that's cool. So let's try the same thing on our instrument group. Another thing I like to do when I'm bus processing like synth groups or whatever is to use just a little bit of OTT. You've probably heard of OTT. It stands for over the top. It is a preset made of the multiband dynamics device within Live. It's great. It makes things sound huge, but also makes them take up very little space within your mix, which a lot of, especially beginner producers, tend to rely on, in my opinion, too much. But for processing groups of instruments that then ultimately get rhythmically sidechained, I like to add just a little bit of OTT, like 15-ish%, because it just kind of like maximizes some of these frequencies so that you can hear more the influence of a rhythmic compressor on them. And I like that. It gets overused by a lot of producers, but I will just A/B this so you can hear kind of what OTT does. So this is our instrument solo. So we've got a little bit of OTT. I boosted it because I think that'll sound okay. Now we will engage this glue compressor in sidechain mode, sidechained to our kick, and then just like we did with the bass, we will bring the threshold down until we see the needle move and hear its effect on this group. I'll do it soloed so you can hear Hear how it's pumping according to this rhythm. So that's how we know the thing's working. Add a bit of makeup gain. This might be a little bit drastic. I'm going to back off on that threshold a tiny bit. So now we've got this whole track, as we're building it, is kind of rhythmically dancing to a groove that we found, again, in this little percussion loop, which I just think is kind of a fascinating idea. I'll play this back now with this sidechaining compressor engaged and hear what it sounds like. Creative with sidechaining. Like maybe you have a hi-hat loop that you want to have duck out of the way of your kick drum. You can easily just put a sidechaining compressor right on that hi-hat loop, sidechain it to the kick or your auxiliary sidechain input here, and that will, kind of do something rhythmically within your track that will help the, cohesion of your groove. I'm going to do the same thing here with our reverb, which we have not really engaged much. Like a few of the synths have some reverb from this return on them, but there's not a whole lot. In any case, as we use more of this main reverb, I'm going to just do this same thing. So this is a glue compressor. I'm going to bring down the threshold, bring up the makeup gain, and engage the soft clip. It should be all the way wet because it's on a return. If you have questions about that, please comment. I will explain that in more detail. But now we have the space of the track itself being rhythmically modulated by this MIDI clip, which is 4 on the floor, but grooved. So we've got... It's going to be time to arrange some of this stuff soon because I have like just a musical foundation that I really like. But before we do that, I want to just make one bass variation because, this bass is just playing one note, which kind of works with his chord progression, but I also think that it would be interesting if our bass could maybe adopt the notes of this chord progression. So. something like that. I don't want C's, I actually want A's because, like I said, we're in A minor. So that was just a jam to get me used to what I want to play. So here we have our straight A, and then we'll do this A, F, G, F sort of figure, which will just add a bit of, a bit of variation to our bass. Something like that. So I'm just going to press this and type it in on my keyboard. Something like that, yeah? We'll fold them so we can see these a little bit better. We will quantize all of these with Command A to select them all, Command U to, Command U to quantize. So I'm just going to use this clip loop bracket to move it in. I just need it to go from 1 to the beginning of 5. Now, I wonder if we might add just like some kind of organic Foley or found sound or something to just sort of like place this track in some kind of psychoacoustic space. It's nice to give the track a kind of more vivid emotion, to use just found sounds from real life. It doesn't have to be like super frontal in the mix. It can be basically inaudible, but still on a subliminal level, using everyday life sounds can be really like kind of just like enhance the mood and emotionality of our track. So noises, let's see, something like that. This is some kids in a schoolyard. That will be fine. And we want to keep it at sort of a lower volume, but this is how it sounds in the context of our track so so we can just kind of put that as a sort of ambient bed under some of the changes that are going to happen. So now I suggest we begin an arrangement. There are a number of ways you can get all of these clips into an arrangement, but I'm going to just use our main kind of transport record to play them into an arrangement here. You could, for example, by the way, I'm hitting tab key to get to our arrangement. So like if you wanted, you could just Control C, you could grab this kick, go over here and, paste your kick drum clip in that way. You could also go back here, you could, select all of these and grab them by holding down the mouse, hitting tab, and then they're all with me. I could just drop them into our arrangement like that. There are a bunch of ways, but I enjoy, for things that are kind of simple like this, where like it's just a few things and they play nicely together, and I know I'm just going to be able to kind of, use them and arrange them how I want, I'm just going to go here and make sure that all of these little play symbols are on, including our sidechain input. We've got green playheads on each of these, which tells you that these are going to play when the track plays. So I'm going to just hit record, and it's going to automatically play back this stuff. After maybe 8 bars, I'll switch from our first bass line, which is that just rhythmic A, to our chord progression, which is A to F to G to F, something like that. So you'll notice me after a little bit just hit play here, and it'll automatically play this clip. We could name these too, just to help us with our arrangement. So we could, I'm going to do Command R to rename this MIDI clip, and I'm going to say bass pedal, meaning just one note. And then here we will say bass prog, like bass chord progression. So that way they'll be labeled in our arrangement, and I'll just be able to visually know what each one is. Okay, so let's hit record. So we recorded these clips so many times into an arrangement over here. So all of these groups are collapsed. That's why they look like this. But if you want to see the clips, which I do, I'm just going to expand these groups for now. And this is what we've got. This is all of our melodic information, all of our drum information, our loop, our 2 different bass ideas, and the found sound. So now I'll just tell you a little bit about kind of like arrangement philosophy and some of the this structure lane, which I think is another pretty cool part of the Open Studio session template. So structure is just a group of color-coded MIDI clips with titles on them. So this is kind of a sample arrangement: intro to verse to chorus to breakdown to verse to double chorus to outro. That's kind of a classical pop song arrangement. It's pretty long, because at least at this BPM, like a full 8 bars of intro, and 16 bars of your final chorus without a bridge is like, these are pretty long sections. So I might change that, but I just wanted to kind of provide as a template a number of possible song parts for people to work with. You could also you could put a bridge here if you're a bridge kind of a person. This being a house track, probably doesn't really have any of these parts, but it might have an intro, and then maybe here we'll have main theme, and then here we'll have build, and then a breakdown, then we'll say main theme 2, here, maybe we'll make this our all-in section, but maybe make that a little bit shorter, or maybe, no, let's not. Let's keep it like this and see what we can do. So now we have kind of like the parts of our track laid out, which is so helpful when you go to arranging, especially when all you have is a laptop. So I've got a kick. I want that to kind of announce itself here during the main theme. I know that it's probably going to be present in the next main theme. It's definitely going to be in the all in section. And maybe it's going to be partially there, like maybe half of the build. Maybe it'll drop out here, drop out all the way here. These are just off the top of my head ways in which our kick drum could behave. Another thing you could do is maybe like, consider everything that we've done as our all in section. So maybe just like, take all of this stuff and plop it over main theme. So we know that those are the sections in which like sort of everything is happening. So main theme begins at bar 17. I'll just like scoot these over to bar 17, shorten them to the length of the section, so we have some idea of what's going on. And then, like maybe I will find our pad and sort of back this up into the intro. So that plays into the intro. And maybe our arpeggiator will not come in during the first main theme, but maybe it'll come in during our breakdown. Who knows? Lead, this is our kind of simple drone. So maybe that'll come in sort of for that first build. That could be kind of nice. We'll extend this. And, oh, sorry, this is the piano. Okay, so yeah, the piano is going to come in here. But where is the arpeggio? I think this is the arpeggio. So maybe this will, maybe that'll come in halfway through the build and take us into the breakdown. Is this making sense? I know kind of generally how to make arrangements on the fly, so I'm doing this without even listening to it. But really, these decisions should be made based on how the music feels. So I just tried to kind of quickly do some of that to show you a bit like my arrangement philosophy. But you don't have to do this stuff without listening to it. And in fact, I would say that you probably shouldn't. So let's see what we've got. Let's begin by crafting an intro, making sure that our main themes have all of the elements here, or perhaps all but one type of thing, like these are all of our drums for the main theme. That's good. We can highlight all of them. Copy. And paste them here. So now we've got our second main theme with all of our drums in. I can extend these ranges here. This is one advantage of having composed all of this stuff in session view, because we have these loops, and the loops are already made, so we can either copy and paste them, or we can just drag them throughout whatever range we want, and we know that all of the music is going to work well together. That's pretty fun. Here's our ambient Foley. I'm just going to drag it across the space of the track. We'll probably take it out, reintroduce it, but it'll just be there for us to kind of work around. And let's see about an intro. All right, so I've got our Foley. We've got a perk loop. Oh, excuse me. I dragged out our percussion loop as though it was our Foley. That's what's going on there. All right. So intro, we've got here bass pedal, Okay, so those those are those first 4 bars. I think maybe I don't want the bass just yet. We're gonna do the first, 8 bars with nothing, and then introduce that bass pedal, and maybe even draw the bass pedal out for the first kind of iteration of the main theme, and then we'll introduce the bass chord progression maybe halfway through the breakdown or something. I don't know. I'll drag it across and just have it play, and then we can kind of carve it out where we want to. That's another way you can make an arrangement, truly, is you can just like drag all of these ranges out through the whole space of your song, and then chop away where you don't want things. Kind of like a subtractive, kind of sculptural approach. This is a good example. Also, with just these pads playing, you can definitely hear the kind of movement provided by this sidechain channel. I think maybe for the intro, maybe we actually don't want that though. So these pads can fill a little bit more space, and then when they start to come, being able to arrange with these rhythmic modulations in mind is a really powerful way to make tracks that are kind of like sneaky groovy and sound professional and exciting without being maximal. You know, it's like one of the theories of minimalism is that you just have like kind of slow and subtle modulations that keep the listener engaged, even though on a surface level it sounds like what's being played is quite repetitive. So we're just going to begin drawing out this arrangement. So our intro sounds like this right that's a decent intro for now, getting us to our main theme, or we can call it our verse 1, or however you want to do it. I noticed something during this bass section that I didn't exactly like, which was that kind of extra note as a turnaround. I want it to be really sparse during this intro, so I don't want that extra hit. Now, you'll notice that this is a 4-bar loop that is getting looped. So these tiny little notches you see every so often, that is the loop marker. So if I were to come over here and take out this note, which is the note that I don't want, this would happen across this entire clip. Now, I only want it to happen in this space before the main theme comes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut just this region using the key command E. So now this is its own clip. I can then take this note out, and it's out on this clip, but not on this clip. So that's just like an important thing when it comes to MIDI note editing. Once you're already in arrangement view, where you'll have like kind of different versions of different clips, and you can change them really as much as you want, but just make sure that you're only changing the clip that you want to change, and not like one that repeats throughout the rest of the track, because then you'll lose information. So that's that. Let's see what our intro sounds like. So we've got soundscape bed. We've got a pad going without any rhythmic pulsing. And our hi-hat loop. But I wonder if maybe our hi-hat loop should just come in just 4 bars later than the bass. So want all of the drums to drop out. Maybe actually just the kick, and then I will take this snare and let's do option drag, so that's here, but so this can come here, then our snare will come in halfway through. Maybe Command D will duplicate it across in space, but just like that. And then let's see, what have we got here? Hi-hats are just gonna stay going, or the groove percussion hi-hat will, and then we're going to place some of these maybe like that, or maybe even like that. So this is kind of our build where like we establish our main theme here, and then we begin to subtract some of the drums and reintroduce them until we get to a full breakdown. So let's see what that's here, but what happened here? It sounds out of time. And sure enough it is. Look, this little notch should be where it begins. So something has gone wrong. I think I know what it is, which is when I pressed stop, it wasn't directly at the point at which it stops. So then I copied it over, and I copied it over from the wrong position. Okay, no problem. I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to drag this over so you can see that these little guys are all in time. These little notches are right on the grid marks. And then I'm going to get rid of those, and that should fix the problem. Thank you for bearing with me. Good times in MIDI editing. So let's drag all of these out into, maybe we'll take away our main piano for our breakdown section, right? That seems like a good thing to get rid of so that we can reintroduce it for the second time of our main theme, which is right here. Let's see what we've got. Just dragging these out because that is telling the arrangement to keep it playing. And even this I will Command D just to keep some of this in. Again, I'm definitely going to chop some of it out at some point, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how to really quickly create an arrangement while being able to use these kind of arrangement markers that I've already set up within the track. So another really fun way that you can use this, which we'll probably get into in kind of more like intermediate or advanced lessons, is to use a reference. So I always recommend mixing to a reference. So this is just like an existing piece of recorded music that you get from anywhere that's, mastered and sounds, a way that you like. You can drop it in here. It's something that you can mix to make sure that, say, like your vocal levels are good, or your snare hits the way you want it to, or your kick is present enough, or whatever. Mixing to a reference is really, really helpful for those things. But also you can kind of steal arrangements, So if you drag a song that you like in here, you can then adjust your BPM to the BPM of that song, or you can warp that song and then kind of like diagram it out, which I think is just a really cool way to learn from music that you like. Also, sometimes I'll just do like a full notes lane. So sorry, this is a tangent, but I think it's interesting. So I'll just For example, I'm going to make a new, I just duplicated this structure lane because it's just empty MIDI clips that are color-coded. But instead, I'm going to say notes. And so then over here we can recolor code this to like, something else. And so instead of intro, you'll say like, you can rename it just pads and hi-hat. So you've learned from a reference here that the intro is just pads and hi-hat. And then for the main theme, let's say we've got like, rename, introduce kick. And then the next one will be something else. And so these are also just kind of like interesting ways to keep yourself on track. And, maybe the kick gets introduced actually halfway through the intro. Good ways just to like use language to help you make creative decisions and decisions that there is a precedent for in music that you like. Anyway, I think that's really cool. Thanks for bearing with me. So back to our arrangement. We have got a few things going on, and then we've got our main theme again, and then all in here, and then an outro, which, maybe we'll take out the kick, but leave some of this stuff in. Again, I'm just kind of messing around here. Okay, so simple arrangement with just the elements that we've pre-recorded in our session view is going to sound a bit like this. This keys thing, I believe, is our arpeggio. I'm going to solo. Just to make this easier on myself, I'm going to call this arp, pad, arp, lead, which is actually a high drone. So I'm going to say high drone here, piano. Great, this will help me keep track of these things so I sort of know better what I'm doing. And let's hear We're now going to maybe get into some automation to give the arrangement a little bit more dynamics. Let's begin with this bass. There is a way to automate basically any parameter over time using envelopes. So to get to your automation envelopes, we can go to this button up here. I'm going to turn off our keyboard tracking right now. So this opens up our automation lanes. These little red lines correspond to whatever parameter is in this drop-down menu. And you can select a parameter to automate by just clicking on it. So now here in this bass group, if we have drive clicked on, this is the drive of our roar device, the thing that is saturating our bass. I go up here and sure enough, we've got the drive on the roar. So I like where this is, but maybe it could be something interesting to sort of increase over time. It's at 2.7 dB right now. I like that level. So I'm just going to click on these various points, which is going to add little nodes to our automation envelope. This is every 16 bars. I've put a node. And the reason why I'm placing those in is just in case I do any automation, I don't want our overall bass level to be changed because I know that this is kind of where I like it. But if I wanted to add like a little bit of intensity, I might put a little ramp here. So I'm going to create another node and then drag this up and forward. So now the drive on this roar is gradually increasing over these 16 bars and then going back to our regular level. So that is a way of like kind of creating a transition. This might be too drastic. This might not even be necessary, but let's listen back to find out. Oh, nothing's happening. All right, how about over here? Notice how you're hearing more saturation and kind of like a distorted feel as time goes on. That's that's a subtle modulation that seems like a totally reasonable thing to put right there before this first big breakdown. And maybe we'll do it again here. Beep. Just a little ramp up and then back to our normal resting state. And maybe we'll do it again here. It's this. It might not be immediately apparent to the listener, but it's something that's going to add, subtle movement throughout a section where other things are playing repetitively. So, the theory here is like you use repetition to reinforce an idea, but you use variation and modulation to kind of create subtle surprise within that reinforced idea, which is just a fun thing for the listener's brain, and there are all kinds of ways that you can do this. We're going to get into many of them. So we've modulated the saturation on our bass. That's totally fine. We might also maybe want to automate the unison on our bass. I will play back this bass line and mess with this unison knob so you can hear what that actually is. You hear how that unison kind of like brings the bass like into this kind of unstable, sort of like detuned kind of place. I think that could be fun to play around with. So with this unison engaged, I'm going to click here, and just for maybe like one of the bigger bass builds, like maybe right here, the last section that it plays, which is the last half of this all-in section, or the all-in section, maybe we'll increase the unison like that. That could be interesting. Let's hear. Also, it's becoming more saturated too. So this bass line that kind of serves as the floor for this track is becoming kind of more out of tune and a little bit more distorted throughout this section, which yeah, it's cool. I'm gonna unmute so you can hear it in context. So those are a couple things you can do with the bass. Now I love modulating cutoff frequencies for synths. So this pad, already it has kind of like a bit of an underwater vibe. This guy here, this is a atmospheric pad from Ableton's Wavetable synth. Our cutoff frequency is located right here. So this is a really, really effective way to, take things underwater, bring them back up. So with this frequency selected, I'm going to come over here to our, to turn on our envelopes, automation envelopes, and maybe okay, I'm going to collapse these drums because we're working on synth group. I'm going to collapse our bass group. So now we can get kind of a better overview of our arrangement here. And I'm going to, like I did with the bass, I'm just going to set these nodes so that when I mess around with this parameter, at least every 16 bars, I know it'll sort of go back to where we like it. So you'll see me do kind of a similar shape as I did with the things I automated on the bass group, which is like kind of a subtle rise over time. That's not a subtle rise, that's a really drastic rise. So I'm going to take that down. I'll show you what this sounds like. So in our first build, and in fact, maybe because this is a build section, I'm going to start it lower. So I'm going to put another node and have it go down at the beginning of this section, up, 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 up through this section, and then back to normal. So let's hear what that sounds like. It's way underwater, but throughout this section, it's coming up, coming up, coming up. Now it's normal, and now it's getting even more intense. You can hear that side chaining compressor. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think maybe again for this breakdown, we take it back further underwater and then back up to normal. I like the way that this envelope, I like this envelope. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to Control C. Then I'm going to come over to our other all-in section, and I'm just going to paste it onto there. And maybe I'll paste it onto here too. So now we have this, this cutoff frequency just like doing some stuff throughout the track. Maybe we'll also like start with it lower. So I'm going to put a node there and then bring it down. So it's going to kind of slowly open up to normal. It's going to play normal first throughout the first instance of the main theme. Go underwater for the build. Get a little bit above water throughout that build. Back underwater through the breakdown. Back up to normal at the end of the breakdown. Then do this same curve throughout the second main theme and that as well through our all-in section. And then back to normal for the outro, and then a subtle rise over the course of the second half of the outro. So this is pretty simple, but it's going to add just like a ton of variation through our synth pad. So I like that a lot. Let's go to our arpeggiator. So there's lots of fun things that we can do here. Similarly, filter frequency. When we composed it, remember, I was like, oh, let's keep this kind of like a subtle rhythmic pluck because then we can open it over time. That's what we're going to do. So let's see. I think the breakdown is basically where that should happen. So I'm going to put in these nodes at like just regularly where we are, again, so that I don't get confused. But I'm going to bring up the filter frequency here. I'm going to bring up the filter frequency here. But also we can do other fun stuff to it, like squarify. Squarify is just changing the wavetable to be more a square wave than what it is, which is a saw wave right now. You'll see it changes just like the character of the synth in a way that I think is quite fun. So let's squarify it. Let's make this a shorter envelope, actually. So I'm going to put another node here halfway through this section, and then boing. Yeah. And then I'm going to take this whole envelope, and I'm going to Command D to duplicate it across. So now we have some squarification happening. Effects. Let's really ramp up the effects in just the last bit to give it some weirdness and some intensity. Echo offset, we're not doing any of that. I think in the breakdown, maybe that could be somewhat helpful to add a bit of like destabilization, you know? So I'm gonna put these nodes to our regular value, which is 0, and then maybe I'm just gonna blah, 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 make them go a little bit crazy. So now let's just listen to some stuff we've got going on in our synth group. I'm going to go back to this ARP and to the filter frequency envelope. And I like this, but I actually want it to go down further. So now I have it going all the way down to 0, which means it'll effectively basically go away. Okay, it didn't all the way go away, but notice how much it kind of gets restrained there. I kind of like that. And then I'm going to get rid of that node, so it's just going to be a smooth ramp up to here. And then we have that squarifying going on. At the end, we've got a sort of ramp up in the overall effects. So let's hear what that sounds I moved up the echo offset a ton towards the end to kind of like make it sort of crumble. And this can go up a little bit too at the end. Okay, so we can always go back and like change this stuff, but one of the advantages of using like these presets that are really big racks is that they have very helpful macros kind of already assigned. So especially, and if you have a MIDI controller like a push or something, all of these macros are going to automatically be mapped to knobs, so you can have kind of a more human performance of your overtime automation with those. But drawing the envelopes is perfectly fine. So this is our high drone. It's doing some stuff. Let's just play with the space amount a little bit. So again, regular nodes so that things don't get too crazy, too permanently. And maybe we'll just, whoops, see, there I go, breaking my own rules. Okay. So the space amount is just that's basically like sending more of the signal to its own insert reverb. So there's that. And then what are we going to do to our pianos? It's got a lot of reverb of its own insert reverb as well. Reverb time, let's see, key noise, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, I already detuned it a little bit and I gave it some EQ here. I think it's fine, but maybe we do just kind of like mess with its reverb. So this is our kind of like resting reverb value, which is 37%. Now I'm gonna bring it down and have it ramp up to that. And then maybe we'll have it ramp up from that in these two sections, you know? So all these red little scribbles just represent the changes over time that we've defined on various parameters. Anything in Ableton can be automated with an envelope. So just keep that in mind, and it's really going to help your track have interest if you have as much subtle or overt automation going on as possible. So that's the automation of our synth group. We can, of course, also like automate anything about the entire group. So like maybe, remember OTT? We put on it earlier, that kind of like maximizer sort of plugin, making things sound wide and crispy, almost kind of crackly sometimes. We could increase that over time, which could be kind of fun. So like maybe during the breakdown, we modulate the amount of OTT on our synth group. Or maybe this first build, that could be kind of interesting. No, let's do the breakdown. Okay. So group is selected, OTT amount is selected, and we're just going to ramp this up. So now, excuse me, you've got all of this automation happening during this time, and then all of these things are also being routed to this group, which is being automated in this way. So let's listen to our breakdown. Cool, so we've got some of that automation done. Another thing with straight audio here is that you can draw fades in directly on the audio clip. So these things just are automatically on every audio clip. Sometimes rather than adjusting automation envelopes for audio, not for MIDI, but for audio, this is just a perfectly fine way to just really quickly, at a glance, do your volume. This sample, this like crowd noise, is another kind of fun thing to chain to your sidechain input. So I'm going to engage, it already has just a graphic EQ. You can see it's playing back pretty evenly. I don't know that it really needs a ton of EQ, but I'm going to give it a little bit of a high shelf to have some of those little bits kind of poke out. And then I'm going to engage this sidechaining compressor, and that can be pretty heavy actually. That way this stuff also rhythmically moves with the track. We can also give it some reverb by sending it to the track's reverb, which itself is being rhythmically modulated by our sidechain input. So now this kind of like bed of sonic ambience becomes a rhythmic element in the same rhythm as the rest of the things in our track. So that's kind of fun. I've also sometimes put ambient samples inside the drum group. So that means that will get processed with like the drum bus, which does a lot of different stuff, and the macro EQing. So I'm not going to do that in this case, but that's just another way. Sometimes I'll have like white noise that I just put as a bed in my drum track and then modulate it rhythmically, so it kind of just like adds interest and crackle and texture to my overall drum mix. So let's listen to how this sounds from the build. Now let's get into some transition effects. In my mind, transition effects are kind of pieces of audio that I drag directly into my arrangement to make, just to accentuate various transitions. So, like from our main theme into our build, or from our breakdown back into our second main theme, or something else to increase the intensity in our all in section, or maybe a riser somewhere, a drop, a crash. These are all words that you might hear to describe various transition effects. I have them placed into a group here not because I do a lot of like group processing on them, but rather just I want to, as I'm working on an arrangement and building it out, I really want to be able to collapse these and have them go away, so that I can, focus on whatever I'm focusing on. So as much as groups are a tool for bus processing or group kind of like effects processing, they're also just, for me, a tool for screen management. We've got a bunch of tracks going on. These utilities are also taking up screen space, so I like to just be able to kind of hide things in their little folders and access them only when I need to, especially when I'm using this structure lane as a guide. However, another thing is you can always change the order of these tracks. So I'm going to work on some transition effects now, and I'm going to just bring this structure lane to right above the transition effects group. So, oh, but that's not what I did. In fact, I put it in my instrument group, so I don't want that. So I'm going to move this back here. So great. Now our structure lane has all the same structure, but it's a little bit lower down. So now I can do my transition effects and have in mind the basic parts of my song, so I know where these things are going to be placed. Now, we've done a lot of MIDI programming so far. This is going to be where we get into kind of just like audio manipulation, not sampling, just audio editing directly into our arrangement. So I'm going to search for some transition effects that could work for this. Over to my browser and just type in effects. I have here a bunch of stuff that I've previously downloaded for other purposes. I'm just going to browse through some of it, and it looks like I have a bunch from this Arcando Future Pop pack. That could be fun. So look, it's divided up into different kinds. So risers, sweeps. I like sweeps a lot. I'm sure you're familiar. So Yeah, a sweep is great. Let's put that right up against our main theme in the first transition effects lane. And, if we wanted to, we could have this happen every 32 bars. I don't know if I actually want that, because here, I'm going to highlight this and everything before it, and then with Command D, I'm going to duplicate this across. Now, I probably don't want this to happen every 16 bars in reality, but maybe like this. So this is a sweep into the downbeat, right? Still a little bit too loud for me. These things do not need to be front and center in your mix. In fact, they should not. So I usually take the volume down significantly. Just still too loud. Okay, so that's a sweep. A riser is meant to kind of build tension over time within a section. So let's see what this does. Wow. That's long and intense, but if used responsibly, it can definitely work. Yeah, so maybe we'll put it here during this build again. Volume way down. We can also, if we don't like how hot this sample is, I can double click on it here, go to the kind of like clip edit zone and just take the clip gain down. That actually helps quite a bit. So maybe I'll use this for this section instead of our sweep, and I'll move this sweep back to going into the build. Another fun thing you can do is now with these pieces of audio just in your arrangement, you can kind of manipulate them in full time. So I like this as a sweep into this moment, but I would also like to hear the reverse within this breakdown. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to Option drag to duplicate it over. Now I'm going to click on this new one that I made. I'm going to come down here and reverse it. So now this has become kind of a new sonic object that goes up into it and then down from it. So nice little swish. Similarly, these sweeps in the first transition effect lane, we can do the same thing. So like maybe I will duplicate this, double click it, reverse it, and now it's kind of like a crash thing, which I can use for some kind of forward motion. So like maybe I will put this halfway through our all in section to just give that little moment in accent and keep the energy high. And maybe I'll do it transitioning out of that all in section into the outro. Reversing audio, super, super powerful. What else can we do? I'm going to create another track in this transition effects group and see what else we can do. Let's audition some of these. Oh, bleep bloop. Okay. Okay. This is a vocal sample that is playing a note. Usually the key that it's in will be written on the sample name. So this is a D sharp. We are in C major. So if I wanted to use this, I totally could, and let's do. But I'm definitely going to need to change the key. So you'll see this little, all right. So if you double click the clip, you'll see that there is a pitch zone. So D sharp is what, three semitones above C natural. So I'm going to move this down 3 and see if that sounds good. Yeah, it does. I strongly believe in using the human voice in your productions, especially for like electronic stuff, especially for electronic stuff that's just made on a laptop. Um, the human voice is a really kind of like awesome shortcut to a kind of emotional resonance. You know, it's like if you hear in a song the voice of somebody, you are much more likely to, to connect to it on an emotional level. So this is just going to be another little tiny accent in here. I'm going to take the volume way down, give it a little bit of our regular reverb, and highlight this whole region, then duplicate that across. So it's not one of the main transitional elements, but it's a thing that happens, halfway through each 16 bar segment to just kind of, keep keep the listener's ear and keep them engaged and keep them connected. So that's what that can do. What's a downer? Okay, yeah, that's the kind of reverse of the sweep that we had earlier. And then, all right, well, those were very good to us. Should we continue to shop for some audio that might enhance the variation of this song? I think we should. I would also like to add maybe more groove percussion and texture to our drums. So I'm going to search for percussion here. Oh, tambourine. Great idea. Absolutely. So I'm going to, in my drum zone, I'm going to make an audio track by just hitting Command T. It's going to make me a new audio track, and yes to percussion. I mean, yes to tambourine. I love tambourine. I use it a ton. I'm going to just drag this out the whole time and then carve away some space where I know that I don't want it. Yeah, maybe it'll come in a little bit early and sort of announce some of the percussive stuff. Let's hear how it sounds all in with our drums. Pretty good. I'm going to take the volume down a little bit, give it a little bit of reverb, and I think I want to try grooving it to the kind of master groove of the track. So let's see how that sounds. Halfway through the main theme to, just to kind of make sure that the listener doesn't get bored with this 8-bar loop being played twice. And hear how our vocal sample kind of like cruises into that moment, and then we introduce this added element of exciting percussion. I think that works quite nicely. Maybe we'll take it out for just one more section. That's pretty great. Let's find one more piece of audio that just could kind of help us do some stuff. I'm happy to manually program drum fills with the drum hits that we already have, but uh, it can also be fun to just, learn from stuff that's already made. Oh, that's the loop we already have. How about that? That's interesting. Let's make another one. And this will just be one little variation that we hear not super often, but maybe when the tambourine isn't happening, way in the background, lots of reverb, super low volume. Barely audible, but definitely gives texture. I'm also going to groove this, all of these. See, okay, so I selected all of them, and I'm going to give them that same groove that we're working with. So rhythmically, they just sound kind of in time, and then maybe I'll just extend that range out. So really our all in section, the second half of it, everything truly is all in. Okay, great. So we've got some transition effects. We have got some added percussion texture above the stuff that we've programmed ourselves. Let's go back to this sidechain channel and maybe just like take out some of this MIDI to let the track breathe again. So it's not in here, right? And then when our main theme comes, so that's when everything kind of begins to pump. It's going to pump through our build, and then our breakdown, maybe we'll just like sort of let everything go for a little bit. And then when we start introducing, looks like our kick drum right here, then things will kind of start to pump again. All right, so drums are feeling good. I think we can still do some music composition, but just for the sake of showing you all some stuff, maybe we'll start a rough mix. I have a mix rack just automatically set up on this session template. So again, if you don't have this, please get it. It's always free. This is not like, the only way to mix a track, but this is just for the purposes of creating demos really quickly. I think this is a really, really helpful tool to have. So um, we've been working without this engaged because I think that's kind of important. It's important to like get your volume balances right and some of your spatial effects and stuff before you start to process the entire track. But at this juncture, I kind of feel okay about that. We have like a rough arrangement. A lot of our automation is done. Transition effects are added. We'll keep working on it, but for now it's fine to start working with some master bus effects. So I'm just going to engage this whole effects chain, which is comprised of, it's an effects rack with a big EQ, a glue compressor, a saturator, and a utility. So I'll tell you what these things do. This, of course, is just an equalizer. It has some, broad gradual curves to kind of overall boost or cut out frequency bands that are too much or too little. Again, this is for the entire track. Some compression, just to even out the dynamic range a tiny bit. We have here a saturator with the preset a bit warmer, a little bit of drive here, and just a little bit of dryness. This is doing not that much, but it's just kind of like giving the whole thing a bit of subtle harmonic enhancement, which results in louder perceived volume and also hopefully just kind of more pleasing to the ear harmonics. And then this utility we're using to give the track some stereo width, which also contributes to its perceived loudness. and kind of wideness. So I'm increasing the width just to 131% with the bass in mono. So what this means is, like, if you click bass mono here, everything below 120 hertz, everything below 120 hertz is going to be in mono, which is really good. You don't want to spread your bass out. You want to have your mix spread wider the higher the frequency range. But if you spread the bass out, it'll kind of lose its impact and not really hit the way you want it to. After we see how this sounds, we may go into some kind of like manual panning and stuff for fun. But I want you to just hear how this thing sounds. We'll like look at this graphical EQ. We'll make some changes. We'll also look at some of these macros. So without the master chain engaged, our track sounds like this. The way that it's set up, we have just like a little dip in the bass zone, which is pretty good. This knob designates the mids, and then this tells you kind of what frequency the mid band is actually affecting. So I think it's kind of good where it is. I took just a tiny bit out of the highs because it was sounding a little bit harsh. These threshold and makeup correspond to, of course, this glue compressor. So we'll play this back and see what the compressor is up to. For master bus compression, you really don't want your compressor to be working any harder than this is. Like, in fact, I might even back off a little bit on the threshold. We don't want this thing to be like, we don't want to see this needle moving like a ton. We can do other things in the mix to ensure that your main channel doesn't need all this compression. But let's I'm going to actually quickly deactivate these two things so you can hear what just EQ and compression sound like, and then plus a little bit of added saturation and a little bit of added stereo widening. Here we go. Okay, so we've got kind of the basics of our main channel processing going. Now let's think more deeply about spatial effects. We're going to do some manual panning throughout our instrument group, our transition effects, and our drums. So in general, kick, snare, bass, these things should be center, not necessarily front and center, but center. You don't want to spread these things out. However, once again, the higher the frequency range, the more opportunity you have to kind of spread things throughout the left and right of the stereo field. This will make your mix sound just, I don't know, have different things happening in different channels. So, if you listen to well-produced music in headphones, you really can tell this, that things are happening differently in the right and the left channel. And again, that's just like kind of exciting for the brain. So let's think about this. I think the kick, the snare, and the clap, those can be just regular center. This closed hi-hat loop, okay, so we've got closed hi-hat and then our original kind of loop that we grooved everything around. These can be, we'll consider this like a pair where like one goes a little bit here, one goes a little bit here. So we've got, 10 to the right and then 10 to the left. So now these things will be slightly in different spread them out even a little bit more. How about that? And we'll do the same thing with these two kind of extra percussion texture things. Let's do 14 and 14. All right, cool. So I'll just show you, sometimes people also like to mix back in session view once the arrangement's made. So I'll just show you how that looks. What that looks like when you adjust those left and right parameters is like this knob here corresponds to the panning. So you can see that these things are spread out. Let's do the same thing with our instrument group. So I feel like the pads should be, the piano should be pretty much centered, but the high drone and the arp can be spread out. So maybe we'll go a bit to the right here, a bit to the left here for the arpeggiator and the high drone, and then these pads will be just where they are, centered like the piano. Do you see how I'm doing that? I'm trying to create an amount of balance within the mix, but also spreading things out. So we have some different stuff happening in each side, but overall the mix is balanced, so it's not more heavily weighted to the right or left channel. So basically how I would approach spatial effects. Yeah, let's do some creative resampling here. We have here this channel routed to resampling. So there are a number of different ways you can configure the ins and outs of an audio channel. What resampling is just taking whatever is coming out of the main output and resampling it as audio. So in other DAWs, you might do something like bounce in place, which will take whatever you've got going on and just bounce it down to a single audio file. So I like to just have a resampling channel on my sessions to remind me to kind of mess with some of the stuff. So one really easy way that you can get new textures, new kinds of sound based on the existing content of your track is to solo a group and then arm the resampling and then just record. So I'm going to do that. Our drum group is soloed here and our resampling channel is armed. So if I hit record, this is going to record everything happening on my drum group and only that as audio onto my resampling channel. Let's check it out. Okay, so now we have just this piece of drum audio that we can, kind of mess with or whatever. I'm going to just drag it down to its own lane, and I'll say drum sample. That way we can continue to use this resampling channel for other things. Another fun thing that we might do is take that same section of audio, but instead of the drums, do the synth group. We'll take that group and see if we can sort of mangle that content into something interesting to use as transition effects or something like that. So once again, I'm going to arm this resample group, and we'll just do those same 16 bars, but just the instrument group will be captured in our resampling. Okay, that's pretty nice. I'm going to say synth group sample here. I'm going to give that also its own channel. Now, as I'm doing this, there are a few things that I think could be kind of fun. For one, I'm noticing now, listening back, that our piano is feeling pretty low. Like it's taking up a lot of sonic space and the notes are pretty low. I wonder what that piano would be like played an octave up. I can go here, I can, for example, duplicate this entire track, instrument, MIDI, and all. I can highlight all of these MIDI clips, well, these 2 MIDI clips. I can go here, select all of the notes, and then I'm going to shift up arrow. Hey, that's going to take everything up an octave. So now I'm going to solo this and hear what that sounds like. That's one way to do it. I could also resample it and just increase the pitch 12 semitones, which is an octave up. So let's see what that would look like. I'm going to get rid of this track. It's very easy to recreate if I decide that I want that, but here I'm just going to solo the resampling channel. I'm going to arm the resampling channel. I'm going to solo the piano sample, the piano track, and I'm going to hit play. There we go. So that is our full 8 bars of our main piano figure. So I'm going to go here to our clip editor, and I'm just going to go up 12 semitones, which is an octave. So you'll notice when you do this, you can also choose your warp mode, which can help. Like there are all kinds of different ones depending on what kind of sonic material you're working with. Complex for our purposes here is fine. So now I'm going to solo this new little artifact we've made. And you can hear how different that sounds than just the MIDI being pitched up. So it sounds kind of weird, kind of distorted, and honestly, I think that's what I'm after. Now we have, all of those effects that we put on our original piano and our original instrument group are just printed onto this audio, and then that whole thing is shifted up 12 semitones. So there's some really weird stuff going on. It sounds not great as it is, but we might be able to process it in some interesting ways, or at least take it down and push it backward in the mix, and just kind of like use it to inhabit some of that higher frequency range. I'm going to just, I've given it some of our reverb. Well, I have it here. I'm giving it some of our reverb here. I took it down quite a bit. I'm just going to insert it into some of these phrases that have the regular piano and see if that kind of complements our piano sound. I can also, now that I have this, we'll call it high piano. I can put it in to our instrument group and it'll be just next to the piano here. And of course, that means that this signal will then be reprocessed by the entire instrument bus, which could be good, could be bad. Let's see. Oh, but of course, I have to unsolo. Here we go. It adds a little bit of, variation and dynamism. Right now, I'm feeling like we may want to do some filtering of this as well, just because it has some kind of harsh. So yeah, now it's kind of like sort of a telephone echo of that original piano with some filtering, both to just tame the highs and also get rid of some of the unnecessary lows. So we've got this here now. That's kind of interesting. So great, we'll use that as a high piano. There was one other thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do a similar thing with our pad. I want to take this, I want to pitch it up, and then I want to give it some rhythmic modulation so that it can be sort of like, a higher register element, but that also moves rhythmically with the track. So I will show you how to do that because that's pretty fun too. We're going to solo our pad. We're going to choose a region. We are going to arm the resampling channel. And I'm just going to take an 8-bar loop of that. There we go. Okay, I'm going to make this its own channel here. We're going to say, rename this with Command R, and we're going to say high pad. Let's say tones, and we're going to pitch it up 12 semitones. And let's listen back. Pretty weird. Let's go for complex warp mode and see if that tames some of those like kind of grainy textures. It's a bit less crackly, which I think for our purposes here is pretty good. But that reminds me of some other fun things we could do with it. So let's try to get into some processing of this signal. What comes to mind is grain delay. I'm just going to search for that in my browser here in audio effects. Grain delay is a really fun way to make things go kind of nuts. Before I show you that, I am just going to do some simple EQing here. kind of similar to what I did with the high piano. Grain delay is a device that basically kind of like fragments your audio into little tiny grains and then sort of sprays them throughout the stereo spectrum. I love it, especially when you set the pitch to plus or minus 1 octave, which means all of the grains will be in tune with your original sample, which is kind of cool. So I've got 12 here, which refers to 12 semitones, which makes sure it'll be in tune. The spray is up. The frequency, I'll let you dial that to taste. Random pitch you can do, but I'm going to choose not to because I want it to be in tune with what I'm doing. Turn up the feedback a tiny bit. I'm going to make the delay just 1, so it immediately delays, and then the dry wet is right about at 50, and you will hear what's going on here. So you hear all those little tiny grains being processed and sprayed about. I really like this device, but I also want to go further. I said I wanted to kind of like rhythmically modulate this device a bit. I'm going to use an auto pan in kind of an unconventional way to create some rhythmic modulation. So I'm going to search here for auto pan. I've got it here. Now, it does this thing where if you turn the phase all the way up, I'm going to change this to, 16ths is fine. If you turn the phase all the way up, it's actually not 2 channels, it's just 1. So you'll see as I increase this amount, I'll show you. It's a 2-channel system, right? So you have this wave, which is processing your left and your right signal. If the phase is all the way to 360, it just collapses into 1. And so when it's up, the signal is being played, and when it's down, it's not. So at full amount, I like to use this shape as well, we have a kind of like tremolating effect, which I'll show you here. See how that's being kind of like rhythmically processed in 16th notes by this thing? I'll show you kind of A-B that. So this is this thing with some grain delay, no auto pan, more kind of legato, and then you've got this, stuttery. I like it. I think we can use it. So I'm just going to rename this rhythmic pad, let's say. And of course, you can process your internal resamples however you want, but these are just some kind of quick examples. I'm going to put this here and then maybe alternate this with the high piano. Maybe play it throughout the breakdown, and then again here, again there, something like that. And then these 2 elements, maybe I will pan them left and right to keep our stereo balance. Yes. Those sound good, But as I'm listening back, I'm finding that this arpeggiator is getting a little bit annoying because it's sort of always in. So let's just take it out a little bit. So yeah, we've just got a few more textures now thanks to some resampled stuff. I don't think I'm going to use this synth group resample because I just resampled two distinct elements of our synth group, so that may not be necessary. But this drum bit, I think we can use in our intro. Our intro currently doesn't have a whole lot going on. I'm going to take this, I'm going to give it some pretty heavy filtering so our listener understands it as very kind of like distinct from the actual drums. And I will play it back for you so you can hear what that sounds like first, and then we'll get into how to use this to create sort of like a preview in the mind of the listener of the drums that are going to Already sounds pretty good. I don't think I'm going to have it going for the entirety of the intro, but maybe we will have just this bit of it, and maybe we'll fade it in, and maybe we'll even automate this filter so it starts really, really narrow and then kind of like increases as we go into the main introduction of our drums. That could be kind of fun. So let's try that. I'm going to select the frequency of this fourth node on our graphic EQ. I'm going to go to our envelopes. I'm going to move it here, and then I'm going to gradually move it up. One thing I didn't show you earlier was that with these automation envelopes, you can actually curve them. I'm going to hold Option, I think, and drag this, and you see that it can create now this curve. So it's going to be slow ramping and then quickly ramping the closer it gets to its node. Anyway, I don't need that now, but I just wanted you to know about it because it's a fun way to make envelopes even more expressive. So let's see what this thing sounds like. So this filtered drum resample kind of just like gives us a little preview of what the drums are going to be like, and I think that will help to add some interest to our intro. We might even consider using this again, maybe like in the first part of our breakdown. That could be kind of fun. Let's see what that sounds like. Sort of like that. I'm going to have that play, not actually there, but just through the second half this part of our breakdown, and it's going to filter it in and then back out and then back in, and that'll be just another nice little artifact for us to work with. And then I also wonder if we might just isolate one of these hits, whatever this is. Let's see what it is. Yeah, let's take this. I'm going to Command C to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it somewhere else and maybe make like a little transition effect out of it or something. Let's just see exactly what it is. Okay, cool. This is another thing you can do. You see these big sweeps that I dragged in from just found audio. You can totally make these. So I've got here, we'll call this a sample clap. I'm going to go back to our resampling channel. It is armed, so I'm going to put a hybrid reverb directly on this clap sample. So right here, I'm going to size way up, decay way long. I'll show you why in a minute. We've got our resampling armed, so I'm just going to record this with this huge reverb on it. Yeah, nice. Okay, that's what I'm after. So I'm going to record that. Super long. So now we have this like very long-tailed thing, which I'm going to go into the sample editor. I'm going to just boost its gain a bit so we can hear it better. I'm going to now get rid of the original source because we don't need that. I'm going to move this up here. I'm going to rename this clap sweep, something like that. I'm going to do some additional processing. So now this is the kind of like third layer of resampling we will have done with this one piece of our drum audio. I'm going to give it a bit of extra saturation. So I'm going to search here for saturator. Just throw that on there. I'll engage our EQ to just see if we need to do anything with that. Increase the drive quite a bit, the wet dry, and let's see what this thing is sounding like. Ouch, incredibly loud, but that's fine. So I'm going to take the gain of it, I'm going to take the volume of it way down, and then we're going to do that thing that we did earlier, which is to reverse it. So now we have our very own kind of like homemade resampled clap sweep thing. It's pretty loud right at the head, so I'm just going to do a little bit of manual editing of this sample so it doesn't hit quite as hard. And now with much less volume, we have this thing that we can use with our other transition effects as just another little accent. Now, it's important that you line it right up with whatever moment you want to accentuate. In this case, because we've like basically handmade this audio, it doesn't automatically know to snap to the front since we ourselves reversed it. So anyway, that was just some manual editing, and now I have this clap sweep thing happening amidst our transition effects. It's going to sound like this. Subtle, getting louder, getting louder. And kind of one nice thing about this transition effect being made from source material from within our track is that it's going to mix really nicely with the overall mix. So let's go ahead and hear that in context. And I like the sweep, but still the final moment feels just a tiny bit sloppy to me. So I'm going to back this up still even more. So now it's going to sound like this. Cleaner, better. And I'm going to duplicate this whole range over to put that new sample in these other two places. And yeah, so that also, yeah, this looks good. This is a nice spot for these little sweeps. Let's do one forward one just for fun, like over here. So I'm going to Command C to copy it, Command V to paste it, and then reverse it yet again. So now we have this like forward. Okay, so that's hitting on the one that takes us into the that next section, that build section. But because it's a clap, we could also use it to double the existing clap. So instead of having a clap on the one, we could put it on the 4 of the previous bar, which would maybe sound a little bit better. Let's see what that does. I like that a lot. I think we're going to keep it. Anyway, resample away. If you enjoy working with audio more than you enjoy programming MIDI, and you feel like most of your MIDI programming has been done, there's also a way to just convert a track directly into audio and preserve your kind of whatever processing you have on the track, but just making all of that MIDI into audio. So I'll do that with our snare channel just to show you, and then we can maybe make some other enhancements to our snare channel, or let's see, what else could we do? Yeah, that'll be fun. So I'm just going to select this track, and I'm going to control-click freeze track. So this is telling the computer that it will no longer have to make any adjustments to MIDI on the fly. The track is frozen. You can see it here. We can't really do anything to it. Once it's frozen, you can also flatten it. Actually, I think now with Ableton 12, freeze and flatten can also be done in one command. So this may not be totally necessary, but once it's frozen, we can flatten it, which just magically creates audio. So if you like I said, if you like editing audio because you can see all of the stuff, and for example, you've done all the automation that you know you want to do with a track, you can just freeze it down and then have the actual audio hits to edit as you would like. Let's see, it shouldn't change the sound really at all. Like it's pretty transparent in that way, but now we have all of that stuff just kind of printed onto this track, and we can process it from there. I'm going to give our snare just a little bit of saturation, this a bit warmer thing, to hopefully fatten it a tiny bit. And then I'm also going to put an EQ8 after that to just kind of like tame some harsher frequencies. So let's just hear our drums, and I'll do some snare processing now that we've got just audio of our snare. That sounds pretty nice. I'm also hearing that I don't really want this clap to come in where it does. I'm going to actually take this bit of snare, put that there, and then back the clap up. So our build section. I'm also hearing now that maybe in our all-in section, I would like the clap to not just hit on the 4, but maybe actually the 2 and 4, which would like kind of reinforce the snare rhythm. So maybe in our all-in section, I will remember Command E cuts a clip for you. So I'm just going to change it here. The rest of it will be fine, but just in this one, I am going to basically double the amount of claps we have here. So I'm going to highlight all of them by clicking over here, and then I'm going to Option drag. I'm going to back them up in space to the 2, so now they hit on the 2 and the 4. So in this all-in section, instead of claps on every 4, we've got claps on 2 and 4. Dragged it out to let that 2 and 4 clap just play the whole way until the clap is done playing. So I think that's in a good spot. I'm going to collapse these drums down, but I was noticing that our big hall clap, I really liked that, and I think I want to put that in more places. We have it as a sweep here, a sweep kind of like into a downbeat. I think it's more effective as a, as like a clap element. So I'm going to get rid of these because I like it more like this. So the best way to do this, because you see it's a little bit before the beat, right, is to just make sure you know exactly where it starts. Command C, and then where else can we put it? Let's put it like every 16 bars or so. So I'm going to put it there. That is wrong. I'm going to put it there. So. Fiddling about with the outro a tiny bit while we finish up here. So yeah, those are some really kind of just like basic uses of creative resampling to add some interest to your track. And I'm just going to do one more little thing here before I let you go, um, which is now to subtract some stuff. One really effective transition effect is actually just silence. You know what I mean? So, like, before a big section, will sometimes just our kick turnaround is like some extra kicks, but what if we just didn't have them? You know, that a thing you can do in conjunction with this is you can also get rid of your sidechaining input. So things kind of like exhale a little bit before they get sucked back in on that next downbeat. So I'm going to do that there. Where else can we drop some kicks? Let's come over to partway through our main theme here, get rid of those. And maybe get rid of that. Is it making sense what I'm doing? Great. Going to zoom in a bit more, get rid of this as well, and this, and this. This is not really meant to be consciously recognized by the listener, but for stuff that like has pretty straightforward 4 on the floor groove, it really helps to just add some variation to the beat and keep the listener engaged. Taking things away is so sick. And actually, now that I'm doing this, I'm like, I wonder if we could drop some snares. Let's do that. Let's just like take away these guys. Let's take away that clap too. Yeah, so that's kind of like subtracting some stuff right before our all-in section. And then I did something that I didn't really mean to do, which is took away some hits that actually I want to take away in a different spot, which is right here. Haha. That is the cool part about non-destructive editing. If you take something away, you can just drag it back into existence. So that's pretty nice. While I'm at it, I'm going to get rid of that snare. So I'll just give you an example of what this sounds like. That kick and our sidechain input just kind of got out of the way. It accentuated our big hall clap transition effect, and then things got brought back in for the build section. So that's how that sounds. How else might it sound? Let's check it out here. Once again, out of the way, hall clap happens, and then on this downbeat, we have a different little transition effect, that little psh, this guy. Pretty cool. So this is how I would recommend going about making an arrangement, making a rough mix with the Open Studio session template. This is all kind of like written down step by step in the Foundations course, and the interactive workspace that comes with that has tons of other resources, creativity exercises, sound design tutorials, and that kind of stuff. If you are interested in enhancing your workflow and trying to make speed work creatively in your favor, we also have just a little guide. It's called 3-Hour Producer, and it's about kind of like finding focus and intention within your electronic music workflow to get more stuff done and be more creative. So I'm going to link to those 2 things in the description here. I'm probably going to keep working on this song, and I may use it for future videos. If you want this session, like I said, it's all native Ableton stuff plus some samples from elsewhere. But if you want this session and you want to kind of poke around in it, just comment below and I will send it to you. All right, thanks so much. I will talk to you later.